This is the GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW flyers. That is 2-3 page essays on the themes of Masculism and MGTOW, written by and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. This is flyer number 66, entitled MGTOW-Masculist Message to Fluffie Feminists. Description. This flyer is directed at fluffy feminists, explaining why MGTOWs-masculists have such a hatred of them, refusing to be their manslaves and forcing them to become FIPs or be manless. Flyer itself. MGTOW-masculist message to fluffy feminists. This flyer is addressed to fluffy feminists, that is, feminists who have had their feminist consciousness raised, but not their masculist consciousness raised, due to ignorance of masculist ideas. So, by default, have traditional female attitudes towards men. That is, they see men as exploitable checkbooks, cash machines. You, that is, fluffy feminists, are 99.5% heterosexual. So you depend on men sexually. If you want orgasms that you don't give to yourself, that is, if you want men to give you orgasms, you have to be nice to men. Or they will do what MGTOWs, men going their own way, refusing to marry and have kids, spending their money on themselves, and masculists, men's livers, do to fluffy feminists. That is, have nothing to do with you. Not only will they not marry you, not give you babies, but they won't even fuck you. Your misandrist, male-dumping bitchiness is so hated by MGTOWs-masculists that they punish you by forcing you to rot on the shelf to extinction. Such men, in capital letters, will have nothing to do with you. You complain about, where have all the good men gone? Meaning, what happened to robot male manslaves who were prepared to work for a fluffy to be her manslave? In brackets, a fluffy is a masculist term for a traditional woman who expects to be able to parasite off a man's money, having him pay for a middle-class house that she raises her kids in. The essence of masculism is that it is, quote, a rebellion by men against working for women. Thanks to the contraceptive pill, household gadgets, higher education for women, etc., women now choose to have 0, 1, 2 kids, which may occupy them fully for a few years, but then they have 40 plus years of career time. Masculists put enormous moral pressure on fluffies and fluffy feminists to become FIPs, that's financially independent persons, so that they pull their financial weight and do not parasite on a man. Now in capital letters, now that women can work, they must work. Anything else is parasitism on men's labour. MGTOWs and masculists refuse the traditional male role of being manslaves of women. They have voted with their feet and will only have relationships with fit women, and even then only tway-twef relationships, that is 2A, 2F relationships, where the man and the woman are both FIPs, with each having their own apartment. That way, the man gets the regular sex he wants. When the relationship fails, as most do, they both just return to their apartments, cost-free to the man. There's no divorce because no marriage, no alimony because the ex-girlfriend is a FIP, no child payments because no kids. The great advantage of tway-tweffing for a man is that it forces the woman to remain nice to him. If the woman starts nagging him or withholds sex, then he just quietly walks away back to his apartment with no cost to him. His girlfriend knows how easy it is for him to walk out, so she remains constantly motivated to be nice to him, or she knows she can lose him so easily. Traditionally, a fluffy was nice to her man at the beginning of a relationship, not nagging him, fucking him a lot, until they were married. 10 years later, she will probably be bored by him and want out in half of marriages. So we'll use the divorce courts that you fluffy feminists have taken over to financially massacre him. About 1 married father in 4 will be financially massacred in the Western divorce courts that are paragons of fluffy feminist psychopathic abuse and massive injustice against men. A divorced man will lose custody of his kids with about 90% probability. He will lose his house so that she can raise her kids in it. He will be forced by the divorce court to pay child support to kids he might see twice a month in weekends. And if his ex-wife is a fluffy, he may have to pay her alimony for life so that she can continue to parasite off him after the divorce the way she did before the divorce. This massive injustice against men, committed by the divorce courts, taken over by fluffy feminists, is the principal reason why MGTOWs and Masculists so hate you. We know that you don't love men. It's in your genetic nature to love men's financial exploitability. And as soon as your man loses that exploitability, you will coldly and disloyally dump him, falling out of love with him and move on to a more exploitable male. Men recognize that this makes perfect Darwinian sense. MGTOWs call this idea that women don't love men, but rather men's exploitability as the red pill, an analogy taken from the movie The Matrix. Taking the red pill is the choice to know the negative truth. It makes men who have taken the red pill, as distinct from blue pill men, who still believe the myth that women are capable of loving them, much more cynical of women. And so they are much more wary of women's tricks to extract resources, that is money, from men. As a result of your takeover of the divorce courts and the more than 10 million US men you have financially massacred since the 70s, MGTOWs and Masculists refuse to marry you and refuse to give you babies. Masculists go further and refuse to even fuck you, preferring to fuck only fit women, thus putting enormous moral and sexual pressure on fluffies to become FIPs. Masculists see clearly that so many of men's gender problems would disappear overnight if we lived in a FIP society, where all adults are FIPs, that is, financially responsible, career-competent adults, pulling their own financial weight and not parasiting on the other sex. This is why Masculists, who are a lot more politically active than passive MGTOWs, who simply walk away from the marriage market and paternity, place such enormous emphasis on ridding the world of fluffies by refusing to have relationships with them. That paragraph was probably the core of Masculism. Really important. The primary political goal of the Masculists is to wipe out fluffies by letting them rot on the shelf to extinction, refusing to marry them, refusing to give them babies, and refusing even to fuck them, preferring to fuck only FIPs. Indirectly, you fluffy feminists have become genocidal criminals because of what you have done to the divorce courts. You have made marriage and paternity so toxic to men that men refuse to marry and have kids. Only about 30% of young men in the US now are willing to become manslaves to women. The other 70% see them as ignorant fools who will have to learn the hard way by being financially massacred in the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts. That will wake them up and convert them from being blue pillars to red pillars. Within a decade, the proportion of young men prepared to be manslaves to women will probably have fallen to about 10%. So then the gender politicians will have to mend-fair the gender laws, so that men are prepared to be fathers again. If the gender politicians don't do what men want and listen only to you fluffy feminist lobbyists, then within a mere century the US population is wiped out. Because the young generation, less than 35, is reproducing only a third of its number. So Masculists and MGTOW hate you for indirectly wiping out the whole population. You are genocidal criminals. You are also lazy parasites on men. In high schools in Western countries, about 2/3 of young women aged 16 choose the soft option. That is non-math, non-science, to study in their junior and senior years at high school. This choice is critical because it inevitably locks them into a path that will make them fluffies in their 30s when their biological clock is ticking and they realize they are incapable of earning good money to afford for themselves a middle-class house to raise kids in. So they look around for some robot male manslave to pay for it. A woman who studies fluffy crap at high school, that is the soft option, will only be able to study fluffy crap at college because she will be excluded from the FIP majors, that is the professions, medicine, dentistry, law, architecture, etc. Or the techs, computer science, engineering, math, physics, chemistry, geology, etc. Because the FIP majors require as prerequisites math and sciences to have been studied at high school. So a revolution needs to occur in high school education. Masculists threaten fluffy crapper women that if they don't study FIP majors at high school, they will pay a heavy price. They won't get a man because they will end up being fluffy parasites on men. So they will be manless, loveless, sexless, childless and poor. As masculist and MGTOW ideas spread throughout society, fluffies will be shunned by most men and by many FIP women. So to summarise a bit, if you don't FIP up, that is study FIP majors, and become a FIP, you will be severely punished by men. Men are traditionally socialised to be FIPs, so have the power to wipe out fluffies. There it is again. As more and more men are choosing to do, a fluffy can only be a fluffy if she can get her financial claws into some robot manslave. But the supply of male manslaves is drying up. So when nearly all men have woken up to fluffy parasitism and the toxicity of the divorce courts, nearly all fluffies will become manless, and especially the fluffy feminists, who are the most hated and despised by men. The only way women will be able to get regular sex and attention from men will be to toy-twef. But a woman needs to be a FIP to do that. Masculists place enormous moral pressure on fluffies. Be FIP or be manless. Be FIP or be dry, meaning their vaginas will remain dry due to a lack of men willing to fuck them. Fluffies can rot on the shelf. It's likely that a decade from now, very few women will dare state publicly that they are feminists. In fact, that's happening now in 2017, in large numbers. Because to do so will be the kiss of death for them in terms of ever getting a penis, let alone a marriage or a baby. Women are being forced by FIP men to become FIP women, so that men get gender laws that are men fair, so that the divorce laws are reformed, so that alimony is thrown out, so that child custody is automatically joint by default. With a FIP society, the para will be brought in, that is, paternity rejection right, which no country today has, even Sweden. Women have a legislated MARA, maternity rejection right, aka also known as abortion right. But men don't have the equivalent para, which is one of the most blatant examples of sexual discrimination against men that masculists have such a hatred for. With a para, a father can reject an unwanted pregnancy legally. If the mother wants to proceed with the pregnancy, then as a FIP she can afford to. She is then legally obliged to pay full costs for the kid until it is an adult. So, fluffy feminists, grow up. Stop blaming men for all your gender problems. Take some of the blame for yourselves like an adult. Putting all the blame outside yourselves is childish. If you continue to behave like children, men will continue to treat you like children, as you deserve. So grow up. Inform yourselves about the ideas of MGTOW and masculism, because if you don't, you may remain fluffy and then really suffer, being forced to be manless, loveless, sexless, babyless, poor, and shunned by society, and deservedly so. Fluffy feminists are hated by the masculists and MGTOWs. Cheers. Prof. Dr. Hugo de GARIS. Email profhugodegaris@yahoo.com. Website profhugodegaris.wordpress.com. YouTube channel name, de GARIS, Masculist, MGTOW, Flyers.